The moment Marcus turned away from the officers, Alicia exhaled, though her hand was still lightly gripping his arm. The kids, sensing the tension but not fully understanding it, clung close to their parents. Marcus guided them toward the checkout, his expression calm, but his eyes still scanning the store. Years in the bureau had taught him that walking away didn't always mean the situation was over. The officers, still standing in the produce section, tried to collect themselves. They were aware that multiple shoppers had caught the whole interaction on their phones. The younger of the two muttered something under his breath, and the older officer's jaw tightened. They knew this could get back to their precinct, possibly even higher. The last thing either of them wanted was a formal complaint from a federal agent. Before Marcus could reach the register, a man in a pressed shirt and store name tag hurried toward him. "Sir, agent," he stammered, obviously having overheard at least part of the exchange. "I just wanted to apologize for what happened. We don't condone." Marcus held up a hand. "You don't have to apologize for them. But I do need to know, did anyone from your staff call the police?" The manager hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. "No, sir, we didn't call anyone. The officers came in on their own. I assumed it was routine patrol." Marcus studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right." His voice was measured, but his mind was already cataloging every detail for his report. At the checkout, Alicia began unloading groceries while Marcus kept his eyes on the officers, who had now moved toward the front doors. They lingered just inside, pretending to check their radios, but Marcus could tell they were debating whether to try and speak to him again. They didn't get the chance. A middle-aged black woman stepped up to Marcus from behind. "I saw what happened," she said quietly. "They do this all the time. I'm glad you stood up to them." Her voice carried a mix of admiration and weary resignation, the sound of someone who had lived through similar moments too many times. Marcus gave her a respectful nod. "Thank you for saying that." A cashier, clearly nervous, tried to keep her focus on scanning items, but she glanced at him once and whispered, "Good for you, sir." When the family walked toward the exit, the officers instinctively straightened. Marcus didn't stop as he passed them, but he did speak just loud enough for them to hear. "Think very carefully about the kind of police work you want to be remembered for." The words hung in the air as the sliding glass doors opened. Sunlight poured over the family as they stepped outside. Alicia squeezed his hand, and for a brief moment, it was just the four of them again, away from the stares, the whispers, and the weight of what had just happened. But Marcus wasn't letting it go. Not this time. That afternoon, after unloading the groceries and settling the kids in front of a movie, Marcus retreated to his home office. He sat at his desk, opened a secure laptop, and began typing. His report was precise, factual, and unflinching. Every action, every word, every unnecessary movement toward a holstered weapon, it all went into the record. He included descriptions of the officers, the timeline of events, and statements from the store manager and witnesses who had approached him. He attached a copy of his own credentials verification for the Bureau's Internal Affairs liaison. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. He knew what would happen next. Quiet phone calls, official inquiries, and the kind of professional embarrassment that would follow those two officers for the rest of their careers. Marcus didn't want revenge. He wanted accountability. The following week, Marcus received a call from a city police captain. The man's voice was stiff but respectful. "Agent Brown, I want to personally apologize for what happened in that grocery store. We've reviewed the body camera footage, as well as several civilian videos. The officers involved have been formally reprimanded and will undergo mandatory bias training. I can assure you, this will be reflected in their service records." Marcus didn't thank him. "Captain, I'm less interested in apologies and more interested in making sure the next black family in your city can shop without being treated like criminals. Do we understand each other?" "Yes, sir," the captain said after a pause. When Marcus hung up, Alicia was leaning in the doorway. "So," she asked. "They got the message," Marcus replied simply. She smiled faintly. "Good." Later that evening, as the sun set and the kids laughed in the living room, Marcus stepped out onto the porch. He looked at the quiet street, hands in his pockets, and thought about the dozens, no, hundreds, of similar encounters he'd had in his lifetime. This one had ended without cuffs, without violence, without tragedy. But it was a reminder of why he did the work he did. Not just to investigate crimes, but to hold the system itself accountable when it failed the people it was meant to protect. Inside, Alicia called him for dinner. Marcus took one last deep breath of the cool evening air and went in to join his family. The world wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but in that moment, surrounded by the people he loved, he felt certain of one thing. As long as he had a badge, a voice, and a spine, he wasn't going to let moments like that pass without a fight. Marcus led his family out of the store, the sunlight momentarily blinding them as the automatic doors slid shut behind them. Alicia squeezed his hand but said nothing. The kids chattered about the snacks they'd picked, blissfully unaware of the confrontation that had just taken place. Marcus kept his expression calm, but his mind was still replaying every second of the exchange with the officers. Years in the field had trained him to remember details, tone of voice, body language, positioning, the precise moment the encounter shifted from casual to targeted. Those details weren't just habits now, they were evidence. He loaded the groceries into the back of their SUV while Alicia got the children buckled in. Across the parking lot, the same two officers lingered by their patrol car. They didn't approach, but Marcus could feel their eyes following him. He shut the trunk, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine without giving them the satisfaction of a backward glance. The drive home was quiet. Alicia stared out the window for a while before finally speaking. "You know they'll think twice next time, right?" Marcus gave a humorless chuckle. "Maybe, but thinking twice isn't enough. They need to know there are consequences." That night, after dinner and bedtime routines, Marcus retreated to his office. The small room was lined with filing cabinets and shelves filled with law books, binders, and framed commendations. On the desk sat his bureau-issued laptop. He logged in, navigated to a secure portal, and began typing. His fingers moved with practiced precision, laying out a formal incident report that read less like a complaint and more like a sworn affidavit. He started with the date, time, and location, then described the sequence of events exactly as they had happened. He noted the moment he became aware of being watched, the officer's physical descriptions, their words, their tone, and even the subtle movements toward their holsters. He included his own credentials verification, making clear that he had identified himself as a federal agent in good standing. He described the store manager's statement confirming that no call for suspicious activity had been made by staff. Marcus didn't embellish. He didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. He attached screenshots from civilian videos already circulating online, videos that had been sent to him by strangers who recognized him and wanted to help. Each clip showed the same thing. Two officers following a black family through a grocery store without cause, then demanding identification under a flimsy pretext, only to be confronted with the reality that their suspect was an FBI agent. By the time he hit submit, the report was 6 pages long. It went directly to the Bureau's Office of Professional Responsibility and to a liaison unit that handled interagency conduct issues. Marcus knew the machinery would now start turning, quietly but relentlessly. 2 days later, while reviewing case files at the field office, Marcus's phone buzzed. The caller ID displayed a local police precinct number. He let it ring twice before answering. "This is Agent Brown." A man's voice, low and careful, replied. "Agent Brown, this is Captain Ellis from the City Police Department. I'm calling regarding the incident at Harley's Grocery." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Go on. We've reviewed both the body camera footage and the civilian videos. I want to apologize for the conduct of my officers. Their actions were inappropriate and not in line with our department's values." Marcus let the silence stretch, forcing the captain to keep talking. "As of this morning," Ellis continued, "both officers have been issued formal reprimands and will undergo mandatory bias awareness training. The incident will remain on their service records. I can also assure you that patrol protocols are being reviewed to prevent similar incidents." Marcus's voice was measured. "Captain, I'm less concerned about apologies and more concerned about ensuring that this doesn't happen again. Not to me, not to my family, and not to anyone else who looks like me." "I understand, sir," Ellis said. "And I can promise you, changes are being made." After ending the call, Marcus stared at his desk for a long moment. This was a small victory, but he knew systemic change was slow. Still, every mark on an officer's record mattered. Every incident documented, every policy reviewed, every uncomfortable conversation had. These were the bricks in the long, hard road toward accountability. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold and violet, Marcus sat on the back porch with Alicia. She handed him a mug of coffee and settled into the chair beside him. "How'd it go today?" she asked. "They've been reprimanded," Marcus replied. "Bias training, service record notation." Alicia's eyes searched his face. "Does that feel like enough?" Marcus took a slow sip before answering. "It's a start. But no, it's not enough. I don't just want them to change their behavior because they're afraid of getting caught. I want them to change because they understand why it's wrong." She nodded, her hand brushing against his. "I know." For the next week, life returned to its usual rhythm. Marcus worked cases, Alicia handled her projects, and the kids went to school. But the grocery store incident wasn't forgotten. In fact, it seemed to ripple outward. Marcus received several emails from people who had seen the video online. Some were fellow agents, others were strangers. A few shared their own stories of being targeted for no reason. One message, from a retired police chief, stood out. "Agent Brown, I want you to know that your calm but firm handling of those officers is being used in a training seminar I run for new recruits. You made a point without raising your voice, and that's exactly the kind of professionalism we need to see more of." The message made Marcus pause. It reminded him that even the smallest acts of resistance could echo in places he'd never set foot. On a Saturday morning 2 weeks after the incident, Marcus returned to Harley's grocery with his family. The air inside felt the same, but there was something different in the way the employees greeted them, warmer, more deliberate. Even the security guard at the door nodded respectfully as they walked in. Halfway through their shopping, Marcus noticed the store manager approaching. "Agent Brown," he said with a small smile. "I wanted you to know we've implemented a policy that any law enforcement contact in our store must be cleared through management unless there's an active threat. We want all our customers to feel safe here." Marcus thanked him, appreciating the effort. It was a small change in a single store, but it was change nonetheless. As they checked out and headed for the parking lot, Marcus caught a glimpse of a patrol car idling at the far end. 2 officers sat inside, but neither approached. They watched for a moment, then drove away. Alicia glanced at him. "Think they've learned?" Marcus smiled faintly. "They've learned not to make the same mistake twice with me. Whether they've learned the bigger lesson, time will tell." At home that evening, after the kids were asleep, Marcus stood by the window looking out at the quiet street. The confrontation at the grocery store was just one moment in a lifetime of moments like it, but it had ended without escalation, without harm, and with at least some accountability. That was worth something. He turned off the lights, joined Alicia in bed, and let himself rest. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But tonight, he allowed himself to believe, if only for a moment, that the fight for fairness was inching forward.